Okay, we want to know today what would be the halacha if you have a bottle like this, and some people hold on Shabbat you can't open the bottle. We'll see why. And some hold that you could. And let's say you are from the group that holds, your rabbi said you're allowed to open such a bottle. So if you're allowed to open such a bottle, you have no problem. But let's say you hold that your rabbi said you can't open such a bottle. We'll see soon the reasoning why it's mutar, why it's asur. But if your rabbi said you can't open the bottle, can you ask your friend that his rabbi allowed it? He holds that it's allowed. Can you ask him, or do you say that since for you it's not allowed also for the other person? There's a issur called lifnei ver lo titen mikshol. One is not allowed to cause somebody else to sin. You're not allowed to cause somebody else to sin. Now, if you're considering this, opening this bottle, a sin, can you give it to somebody else because you're causing him to sin? Or do you say that since for him it's allowed, so you're not causing him to sin, he's doing correctly. He's doing according to what his rabbi directed him, no problem, and therefore it should be okay. How do you look at it? Do you look at it the way you view the issue over here and there's a problem? Or do you view it in such a way that since for him it's allowed, you're not violating anything by giving him to open that bottle? So let's retract and let's try to understand what's the problem with opening such a bottle. First thing, we need to know that when you open that bottle, you're creating something. What are you creating when you're opening that bottle? You're creating the cup on top. Let me see that bottle. Let's see. This one over there that has the cup on top. You have over here the cup. You're opening this. We can open this or? Yeah. Here, there's a cup now. This is considered what we call a kli, a utensil. What's the use of this kli? You can use it now to open and close that bottle. So it has a purpose. So are you allowed to create such a thing? Before it wasn't. When it was closed and connected with the ring under it, it wasn't usable. Now you're opening and you're making something usable. That is a subject of a machloket. Some say you're not allowed to do that. You're creating something over here. And some say you are allowed. Chacham Ovadia held it's allowed for a few reasons. First of all, he says, no, because first of all, is a split second before the factory closed up on it, it was already a cup that was able to come in and out without the ring on top. Just a split second before it tightened, it already had a Shem Keli. That's first of all. Secondly, Chacham Ovadia says a simple svara. He says, the logic is, if you take that cup and you put it on a bottle that's smaller, it's going to fit. Right now on this, as long as you didn't open it, you can't use it. But let's say you break that bottle and you take out the cup the way it is with the ring, you're putting it over something else, another bottle that's smaller, that's going to fit. So you have no problem. Thirdly, there's something called in Halacha mustaki. In Siman Shin Yudaled, we have something called mustaki, which means if you have a utensil that really is very simple, it's very not usable so much, as soon as you finish the bottle, you're going to throw it out. So it's not that you're creating something that's everlasting, it's just something temporary until you finish the bottle. Such a thing, there's a svara to say that it's mutar. It's called mustaki. The Shulchan Aruch says that mustaki is shivrei kelim, things that are broken and you put together. There's no problem making a keli with that, says the Shulchan Aruch, will be allowed. This is the opinion of Chacham Ovadia. Fine? Others argue. They say that you can't do that for a few reasons. Let's see what's the reasons you can't do it. First of all, when you're opening a bottle, if you noticed, you're ripping this from the cup, right? When you're ripping the cup from the ring on the bottom, that is not only that it's ripped, but it's ripped on a straight line. When you're cutting something on a straight line, it's called in halacha, when you do that, you're cutting something on a straight line, it's called mechatech. You're cutting something on a straight line. For instance, toilet paper, if you want it on a straight line, anything you want to cut on a straight line, you bring anything and you cut it on a straight line, it's exactly where you want it, that's called mechatech. You're not allowed to do such a thing on Shabbat. it's a isur. If you're doing it the way the Torah says, you're violating a Torah violation. So over here, there's another machloket. Listen well. Yeah, we got what isur of mechatech, and when you open English, Horaa, you mechatech. Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach says there's no mechatech. Why there's no mechatech? Also, Rav Moshe Levi in Menuchat Ahava, he says there's no mechatech. Why not? Because mechatech is when you're doing it on the line the way you want it. Over here, you don't care where it cuts the cup from the ring. They just made easier for you. They made over here cut lines, so it's going to be easier for you to cut in such a place. But not that you care where it's cutting, and therefore he allowed such a thing. Of Shlomo Zalman Auerbach. Rav Elyashiv held it's asur because of mechatech. So we have over here a bunch of isurim. One is mechatech. Secondly, you're creating a cup. This is what Rav Shlomo Zalman held. He held that this is considered also what we called makeh bepatish. You ever heard of such a isur, makeh bepatish? Yes. Makeh bepatish means when you are finishing a product. Finishing a product. So whenever you're finishing a product, that's called makeh bepatish. Over here, you're finishing a product. What Cham Ovadia would say, this product is not so important. Rav Shlomo Zalman would also hold in other things like that. It's not important because you're going to throw it out as soon as you finish the bottle. It has no importance. So we learn. Let's summarize. Let's make this clear. You have over here questions of making a keli. That's the cup. You have a question of makeh bepatish. You're finishing the product. You have a question of mechatech, cutting exactly on the line. What would those that allow it hold? That since concerning mechatech, since it's anyway cut already, just for you to make it easier to open in that place, not that you want to cut it on a straight line. You don't care if it's cut on a straight line. You just want that it should be easier to cut. And that was the purpose that the company made it cut over here. So it's easier for you to cut in such a place. Therefore, there's no isur mechatech. Secondly, we can allow this because there's no makeh bepatish or metaken, mana, avid mana. You're not making a kli. Why not? Remember why not? Because it is not important. You're going to throw it out. Very good. Now we come to the big question. The big question is, let's say I hold that it's not allowed to open the bottle. But the group of people over here seem to me like they would be posek like Chacham Ovadia. And they would hold that it's mutar to open such a bottle. So can I ask you on Shabbat, do me a favor, the bottle is closed, open it for me. Is that something that's mutar? So we need to know that this is machloket achronim. We have a Mishnah Melech. We have the Ma'arit. We have in that halacha, the Ktav Sofer that argue if it's mutar or asur. And we explained it before. If I hold something is asur, there's a tzad to say that I can't give it to you as well because I'm making you violate whatever I hold you're not allowed to do. Or we can look at it on the other side of the coin, that since for you hold it's allowed, so I can give it to you. This has to do with a lot of different things. That one would hold something is mutar and the other one would hold something is asur. Can you give it to the other person or not? But let's just explain over here what could be the possible problems telling the other person to open it for you. First of all, are you allowed to tell a goy to do for you something on Shabbat?
And did you do before? No.
Not hinted. Let's say you're telling him, can you open the light? Are you allowed to do that? No. What's the violation telling a goy to open for you the light? It's called daber davar, which means you're not allowed, the Navi Yeshaya says, you're not allowed to speak out whatever you're not allowed to do. So therefore, that speaking out is a violation, nothing to do with the goy.
I can't just, Shabbos, after Shabbos I want to drive to my grandparents.
For instance, so one of those isurim is also not allowed to tell a goy, do for me something that I'm not allowed to do. That's called what? Daber davar. There's also other reasons that it's asur. But let's attack one reason at a time. Daber davar. If I'm telling a Jew to open for me the bottle, am I violating daber davar? Yeah, because I'm not allowed to speak it out. I'm not allowed to say it out. So for that reason, I can't tell the other person to open for me the bottle.
If you think is allowed to carry, let's say he holds the Arab, you don't hold the Arab.
Oh, that is part of the question. We'll get to that in a second. Part of the question. Part of the question. Secondly, we'll get to the hinting. Let's talk about now talking straight to the person, telling him exactly what you want, asking him to open for you the bottle. Second reason you're not allowed to tell a goy, says Rashi, because you're making him into your agent. It's called shliach. If you're causing somebody to become your agent, you're making somebody your shliach, so it's considered like you yourself did it. So over here, when you ask the goy to put for you the light, to turn on the light, it's like you yourself did it. It's called shlichut. And there is a shlichut legoy lechumra. Normally we're saying en shlichut legoy. But lechumra, which means to go and be strict, we hold that there is shlichut. So now, when I tell my friend to open the bottle, does he become my agent and I'm making him into a shliach to open the bottle? It's considered like I'm doing it also, correct? That's another reason I'm not allowed to tell another Jew to open the bottle. Now, listen well. You have another reason, and that is what Rav Belsky holds. He says that it's davar mevuzeh, it's degrading to cause another Jew to become your goy shel Shabbat. You know what's a goy shel Shabbat? If you're stuck and you don't know what to do, and you're stuck without heat in the house, and you have children, and you need to put the heat, what do? You call a goy on the street, or you call what we call goy shel Shabbat. Some places, some communities have a special goy that he takes care of the community. If you have something you need, and it's under the leniency where you're allowed to ask him, he's there always to help out. But you can't make another Jew goy shel Shabbat. That's davar, that's pasul, right? That's another reason that it's become something that's not correct. So we have over here 3 reasons we mentioned that we shouldn't tell somebody else to do something for you. First of all, we said that there is a isur to tell, there's a machloket. If you can tell somebody else to do for you something that you hold it's asur and the other person holds it's mutar. We said it's machloket achonim. Another reason is what? Daber davar, or telling a goy and making him into a shliach. Same would be when you make a Jew into a shliach. And that is much worse. Over there by a Jew, en shlichut ledvar avera. But, you know what it means, en shlichut ledvar avera? I'm making you an agent. I'm making you a shliach to do some violation. I'm asking you to turn on the light on Shabbat. Who's going to get punished for it? Me or you? I asked you. You see the light over there? Go turn on the light on Shabbat. Clear violation of Shabbat. When you do that, who violated Shabbat? Me or you?
Both of us.
Both.
So the halacha says it's you. I'm going to get also punished. But the main person who violated the isur is you. You know why? Chachamim tell us that it's called en shliach ledvar avera. There's no shlichut. You can't make an agent to make for you a violation of anything. Why not? There's a logic behind it. Because when you come and you say, whoa, 1 minute, Rabbi Tahan said, turn on the light. It's not my fault, not my fault. So we tell you, yeah, but you need to know, there's something called divrei harav v'divrei talmid, divrei mi shom'im, which means there is a student, that's me. There is a rav, that's a Kadosh Baruch Hu. Who are you supposed to listen to? To me or Kadosh Baruch Hu? Of course a Kadosh Baruch Hu. And therefore, by listening to me, you yourself did something wrong. And therefore, you violated the Isur yourself. Coming back to us, when you send the goy to turn on the light for you on Shabbat, can the goy say, Divrei harav v'divrei tamid divrei mishomim, what do you want from me? Can we tell him, of course, it's your fault. You should have listened to Hashem. We can't say that. You know why? Because he doesn't have to keep Shabbat. He's listening to Hashem. He's not violating anything. So therefore, it goes back on you. The Isur goes back on you. So over here, same thing. When you hold it's allowed to open that bottle, and I hold it's asur, and I tell you to open the bottle, you're not violating anything. But me, by asking you to do that, I'm making you a shliach, and I can't claim en shliach ledvar avera. I can't say divrei harav v'divrei talmid divrei mishomim. I can't say it's your fault that you opened the bottle because you didn't do anything wrong. You hold that it's allowed. Your rabbi said it's mutar. Therefore, I am the one violating the isur by telling you to open it. That's the second thing. Third thing we said over here, that what? You have a isur of making a Jew into a goy. So we have לפני עיוור לא תיתן מכשול, אמירה, which is either דבר דבר or שליחות לדבר עבירה. There's also שיטת הרמב"ם, by the way, on אמירה לגוי, why it's אסור. And thirdly, making a Jew into something like we call like a goy. All these things would teach us that one is not supposed to tell, but you could do something else. If it's something that you're not straight out saying to the person to do for you, so then you're not violating, not daber davar, he doesn't become your agent, all these things fall out. And therefore, we're saying there's one thing that's left. Maybe it's לפני עיוור לא תיתן מכשול. לפני עיוור לא תיתן מכשול means you can't tell the other person to do for you something that's asur because you're causing him to sin. That we said is a machloket. Kam Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach and said that in Minchat Shlomo, it depends what's the isur. Is it isur deoraita to open it or isur derabanan? If you hold it's isur derabanan to open the bottle, so therefore we have a rule. Whenever we have machloket aposkim, we go lekula. We're lenient, and therefore I can tell you to open it. But we not straight out because I'm violating the other things. But I can hint to you to open it. But if it's a isur deoraita to open the bottle, then I can't tell you because I have to go lechumra. Machloket poskim, when you have machloket, safek. Machloket poskim, you go lechumra. Therefore, you need to know, is this isur deoraita or derabanan? Let's take some questions to wake up the issue over here. Questions? Bechavod, you're first.
Can I tell my friends to carry my kisei Shabbat?
Oh, so you want to know about carrying. It depends if you hold carrying outside. Is it the Oraita violation or the Rabbanan violation? So, 1 minute. If you hold it's the Oraita, we just said you're not allowed because it's a machloket aposkim. If he holds, you could carry. We're talking about a person that holds, you could carry. If it's Isur the Oraita, you're not allowed to tell him. If it's Isur the Rabbanan, you're allowed to tell him. What is it? Is it Isur D'Oraita or Isur D'Rabbanan? It depends where you live. Some places it's Isur D'Oraita, some places it's Isur D'Rabbanan. And now we're going to the next question. Bechavod, you're next in line. Brooklyn is a big issue that it has to do with a lot of different things. And you see, we're on the camera. I'm not going to tell you. Third, Bechavod. No question? Wow. Anybody else? Yeah.
How can that be considered a kli? It has to hold a certain measurement of liquid.
That's a beautiful question. Does it kli have to hold a certain measurement? And the answer is, it doesn't have to. A kli, for Shabbat purposes, it has to have a purpose. Once it has a purpose, it's serving you in any way, it's considered a keli. That was a beautiful question.
I think it's not also a cap, you're also like creating an opening.
Yeah, that's what it is more than
the
cup.
But creating an opening, you're causing...
You're also giving the bottle a reason, you know?
Right. So you made something over here.
I have a question. My wife likes to sometimes make tuna in a salad.
Tuna in the salad?
Like tuna into a salad. She opens up a tuna can.
Okay.
So is there a permissible way to open up the tuna can?
Oh, good question. So you need to know like this. Chazon Ish held that when you're opening the can, you're violating Isur Deoraita because you're causing now to make a utensil, the way we're talking about right now. But today's generation, it's not the same like in his generation. You know why? Because back then, when you opened the tuna can, you know what you did? After you finished, you took out all the tuna, you took that can, you washed it, and you put inside nails, you put inside sugar. You never threw it out. Who's going to throw out the tuna can? Tuna can could be used, could be recycled. You could use it for another 20 years. But today, who keeps a tuna can? Nobody. So therefore, it's considered, like we called it before, mustaki. Mustaki means kli that's not chashuv, doesn't have any chashivut. It's true.
Open it up all the way.
You can open it and throw it out. Some are machmir, not to open it that way. Rather to either, if you want to be machmir, make a hole on the bottom so you're destroying it. Or, like you said, you don't open it all the way.
You make a hole in the bottom and on the top?
Well, when you first make the hole on the bottom, then right away, when you're making a hole on the top, it's not a keli anymore. It can't hold anymore things that you want to put in there, and therefore you destroy the keli by that, like that. And one is allowed to destroy things on Shabbat if he needs to in that scenario. Yeah.
Can you do the same thing with the cap? If you put a hole in it?
Absolutely. Some would hold that if you hold, you're not allowed to use this. So you make a hole in here, punch a hole, and then you open it. You're just violating, according to Rav Eliashiv, the mechatech that we spoke, cutting on a straight line. But besides that, if you make a hole, you take a punch over here.
Take
Take a knife.
The hole, you're cutting it, no?
That's fine. No, that's not correct. When you're cutting it, you're destroying it. Destroying for the purpose of such things would be mutar. You have a purpose of destroying it, that would be allowed. So the way you...
There's words on top?
So you're allowed to people over here are very knowledgeable. What are you doing to them? So you're allowed to rip words on Shabbat. The Rama brought down such an idea that one should not rip words on Shabbat. He spoke about when you're cutting a cake, you're cutting the letters on the cake. And Sama Machmir, the Mishnah Berurah, brings down that even cutting, opening books, that on top of the books you'll have letters, and the opening, you like separating the letters. But the Maaseh, there's many reasons to be mekel. Sfaradim are mekel on this. This is how Chacham Ovadia holds, or Letzion, the Menuchat Ta'ava. Many poskim Sfaradim say it's mutar. Why? Because you have over here many leniencies. One is that, what's the Isur? The Isur is mochek, right? You're erasing words. But in reality, to violate the Isur Deoraita, you have to erase it in order to be able to write new words. But by cutting it like that, you're not erasing it in order to write new words. That's not Asur. Secondly, that's not Asur with Deoraita. Secondly, you're doing it bederech kilkul. You're destroying it, right? Kilkul means you're destroying. Whenever you're destroying something, it's definitely not a Isur Deoraita. So you have over here another reason to say it's mutar. It's not Asur mid'Rabbanan. And thirdly, when you are doing it, you don't mean to cut the words. That's not your meaning over here. You don't mean to erase anything. The reason you're doing it is why? Because you want to make a hole over here so you can open without any problem. That's called, the words that it would be called is a psik reisha. Whenever you have psik reisha with two isurim derabanan, the Mishnah Berurah brings down in Shin Tet Zayin, in Shin Mem, that it's mutar. Two isurim derabanan plus a psik reisha, it would be mutar. And Sfaradim definitely go with that. The Chazon Ish was mesupak about this halacha, but Sfaradim definitely could go with that, and therefore, if one could be careful, cut it in a way that, we're talking about chumrot right now, we don't need to do that, right? But if you want to take the chumrah of punching it, try to do it between the letters, and if you didn't, then it's nishkefelach.
I was always at somebody's house for Shabbat. He said, would you like, on Shabbos, Friday night, would you like some tea? So tea is interesting Shabbat because my wife and I, the way we were learning that we're not supposed to boil a bag of tea. So he said, why don't you drink tea? I'm like, I don't know. I don't know if for him it's allowed, for me it's not allowed. So he held it, he doesn't know, but he took the tea bag inside the tea, in the water. I heard that it's bishul. Okay, so the Mishnah Berurah brings down Rabbi Yonatan Avshitz that said that cooking the bag, it brings in Shin Yud Chet, in Chol Bishul, cooking the bag of tea is a Isur Deoraita. You're violating Isur Deoraita, not only in Kli Rishon, but even in Kli Sheni, because it's called Kaleh HaBishul. It easily cooks. What's Kli Rishon? Kli Rishon means the pot that the water is boiling in, right? The urn. And then you're pouring from the urn into a cup. That's already Kli Sheni. Doesn't Ish hold it's still Kli Rishon, but we hold it's Kli Sheni. So according to the mashmaut of the Mishnah Berurah, it doesn't give you any way that you could do even Kli Shlishi. He doesn't speak about it, but it doesn't. The meaning of the Mishnah Berurah is the only way you could do it is you make what we call tea sense. You know what's a tea sense? You make a concentration of tea before Shabbat. You take a few bags and you dip them into hot water, and then you have concentrated water of tea. And then on Shabbat, you just add water to it. That's it. But many poskim hold that, many Sfaradi poskim, by the way, hold that there's no such thing kaleh bishul altogether. So they would allow to put in Kli Sheni. That's a chidush. Chacham Ovadia and Or Letzion and Ben Ish Chai were machmir on that. Chacham Ovadia says that it's mutar, but tov leachmir, Resh Hamayim yachmir. Okay? So what's the best thing to do? They say that you could do it in Kli Shlishi. Kli Shlishi already is not mevashel anymore. But if you're asking me what's the best thing to do, the best thing is to get away from all questions and to prepare the tea sense before Shabbat. We're dealing, Mishnah Berurah screams that it's Yisur Deoraita Chayav Chatat. Is you violating over your Shabbat? A biblical violation, not a rabbinical violation. And therefore, the best thing is to get away from questions and do the tea sense before Shabbat.
I do before Shabbat. I should do it one from the pot to the 1 cup. From that cup to another cup, you're saying?
Oh, so how do you do? Let's say you have now the tea cents, the concentration of tea. How do you supposed to make it? So let's say this is the water urn. When you pour from the water urn into the cup, you called this cup kli sheni. Now, if you put, that's water here in kli sheni, hot water. If you're pouring from the tea cents into that water, you're not cooking anymore, because kli sheni doesn't cook unless it's kalea bishul, the way we spoke. But the problem is that there are poskim that say that when you're pouring the tea cents, you're coloring the water. And coloring the water is something that's not allowed. Shulchan Aruch brings such a thing down. The Ben Ish Chai is posek like this, halacha lemaaseh. Shevet HaLevi brings such a thing, halacha lemaaseh. So there is a machloket. Chacham Ovadia allows coloring water. He says it's not allowed. So what should you do? You want to get away from all questions. I want to keep Shabbat on the best terms. What should you do? Take another kli, put the tea cents into that kli, take that kli sheni, the second cup that you just poured the water into, and you pour it into that, and you're not coloring anything. You're coloring that water, but it doesn't look like you're coloring because you didn't pour color into the water, rather the water into the color, and therefore such a thing would be mutar. Next question.
I have another question. Interesting, because like this, we have a cat in our backyard. It doesn't belong to us, but he lives in our backyard, and he comes to us every single morning. And my wife has a thing to feed him. Every morning she feeds him, and he's been living there for a couple of years. He doesn't live in our house. Now the question is, on Shabbos he comes to us. Can I feed him on Shabbos? Is he my cat or is he not my cat?
Oh, good question. So the Shulchan Aruch says that the only animals you're allowed to feed are your animals. And therefore, according to the understanding of the Shulchan Aruch, because it's tircha, you're not allowed to have to work, although it's not one of the Torah violations, but to extra work for no reason you're not allowed. Shabbat. Doing it for animals that you're not obligated to feed, you're not allowed to feed. But Rav Shlomo Zalman brings a chidush. He says, let's say you have birds that always come to you every single day. You feed them, they come to you to eat. They're not your birds. But they come, they fly to your backyard, and they're waiting over there for you to give them the food. So therefore, that's considered for that purpose like your birds, and you're allowed to feed them. I would assume that those cats, that cat that comes to you and waits for you and dependent on you, will have the same halacha that you could feed that cat.
Because I feel bad. Every time we're eating and he's sitting and looking at us, I feel bad. Now
he's going to get the meal.
How about basketball on Shabbat?
Basketball on Shabbat. The Shulchan Aruch brings down in Siman Shin Chet. Asur lekashachek bekadur b'Shabbat. One is not allowed to play ball on Shabbat. The Rama says, yesh mekilim v'chen na'agu. The Rama says that some allow it. Shin Chet, Sif Mem Aleph. Sif Katan Mem Aleph.
That's Ashkenazim, no?
Oh, so Ashkenazim allowed, Sfaradim not. But, first of all, what's the Isur? The Isur, the Beit Yosef brings down either because there was a big city, Tur Malka, that was destroyed. You know why this whole city was destroyed? You know what the terrible thing they did over there? They played ball. And therefore, the city was destroyed. We look at it, wow, what are you talking about, Rabbi? What are you talking about? You play ball, the city was destroyed. What kind of punishment is that? We need to know that if we understand that the world exists not on playing basketball or football, it exists on learning Torah. Right now, we're bringing oxygen to the world. If we can realize that, we'll understand that if people wasted their energy, right, to go to space, and you used up you go underwater, and use up your water, your oxygen tank, and you're saying, no, because the oxygen tank is out, so I'm not going to breathe. No, you're not going to breathe. That's the way it works. It's the same thing in Torah. Torah is the oxygen of the world. That's the way it is. So therefore, the city was destroyed. Chachamim said, because of that, don't play ball on Shabbat to remember that. Secondly, it's muktzeh. Muktzeh. Such a thing is muktzeh. There's no purpose for that. The basketball. It's not a keli. It's not a utensil. It's not food. It's called muktzeh. That's another reason. Another reason is, brought down in the Beit Yosef, is because they played in the mud. So when they played in the mud, such a thing would be disgusting. That's not, you can't, that's like a muktzeh also, that becomes disgusting from the mud, it's asur. So some want to say that today it's not so bad, because you don't play in the mud, and therefore it shouldn't be asur. And some want to say, the Shevet HaLevi brings like that, and also Chacham Ovadia brings such an idea, that if you designate it special for playing ball, that the way today you do to the toys, so such a thing would be mutar. Lemaise, once you try to be machmir on Shabbat, what you need to do is get the Rabbi Verver and make sure that you learn, you spend time learning, not playing ball. Yeah?
Now I was going to ask, what about when somebody sweats when he plays basketball?
Well, if you mean to sweat, if that's your meaning, you want to sweat because you want to lose weight or you want to exercise, that's a problem. You're right. There's a isur to sweat on Shabbat, but the isur is only if you mean for it. For exercise, you mean to sweat. But if you just playing and you don't care about the sweating, you're playing for fun, you're running, let's say.
What
you
if
run.
You know you're gonna get, like you're gonna sweat?
Yeah, but that's you don't.
What's your goal?
The point is
Right.
sweat.
What is your intention? That's it. That's what it says in Halacha, that one is allowed to run on Shabbat, bachurim amitangim larutz, kids that enjoy running on Shabbat. Then you're going to tell a 12 years old, don't run on Shabbat. He can't walk. 12 years old can't walk. So, therefore, they're allowed to run on Shabbat. You're very quiet, b'chavod.
Ask him right now, you can.
I've heard a lot of this before. I don't know how much to ask. I know.
Okay?
Good question, I don't know.
You have questions, I forgot.
Very good. Let's have now